coming up on this edition of Southwest TV News. The holiday season is on the horizon, and as many plan to gather with family and friends for celebration, you're reminded of the stricter rules now in place across Saskatchewan for impaired driving. As the term impaired includes alcohol, drugs, and marijuana. Swift Current and area veterans are being honored through an annual banner program led by the Swift Current Museum. Recently, 5 new banners were unveiled during a special presentation, with numerous guests gathering to honor loved ones and friends. As the temperatures drop throughout the winter months, many individuals are fortunate enough to jet away to exotic locations. And as inviting as this sounds, health officials are reminding you to ensure your travel vaccinations are up to date. Thanks for joining us here today. RCMP are reminding you to have a designated driver this holiday season, with new impaired driving laws now in effect across the province. The holiday season is on the horizon, and as many plan to gather with family and friends for celebration, you're reminded of the stricter rules now in place across Saskatchewan for impaired driving. As the term impaired includes alcohol, drugs, and marijuana.
The provincial legislation has come into effect with the seizing of vehicles and the length of time that vehicles are impounded for provincially as opposed to the federal legislation. Obviously, with, the Christmas season coming upon us and office parties, we encourage people to take advantage of the designated driver programs and use public transport, be that taxi or the bus systems that are in the community to avoid putting themselves in a situation where they're faced with an impaired driving charge.
He goes on to explain that RCMP across the province have been trained to recognize all forms of impairment to further keep the roadways safe.
We've got standard field sobriety testing courses that members take. That's the first course to recognize it, and then from there they forward them or move on to the drug recognition or the DRE course, which is used to detect impaired driving. And if the officer who's taken that course feels that you're under the influence as a result of the test he administers, then we do a blood demand, and that blood is analyzed for the level of THC in your system.
By planning in advance and having a designated driver, you can help ensure everyone has a safe holiday season. The Swift Current Museum continues to honor local veterans through an annual banner program. Swift Current and area veterans are being honored through an annual banner program led by the Swift Current Museum. Recently, 5 new banners were unveiled during a special presentation, with numerous guests gathering to honor loved ones and friends. A ceremony which was filled with emotion for many. 94-year-old Jerry Fife Smith, a World War II veteran, was in attendance for the unveiling and was surprised by the presentation.
Just look at it and laugh. I was with the RCAF. I was a wireless air gunner.
Jerry's son Gordon and other family members sponsored the banner and were pleased to be a part of the ceremony while sharing some of his history.
He was deployed right at the end of the war to India and Ceylon at the time, and they had large air bases there, and they were thinking that the next era of the war was going to go that direction, and then it was over, and he never actually saw active combat. You'll notice he's hard of hearing, and that's because in his position as a wireless air gunner, they had to wear headphones all the time, and there was a lot of static and crackle, and through the years you can really tell that his hearing degraded from serving.
Douglas Murchie of Swift Current was on hand to honor his uncle Ronald, who served in World War I, and stresses the importance of honoring our veterans.
I know that he lost his life at near a place called Lens in France. That's about all I can tell you about it. And he's buried in one of the cemeteries there in France. When you know what's going on all over the world and the lifestyle that we live here, freedom to move one way or another and not have to be too concerned about anything, it's these people that made it that way for us.
A total of 20 banners have now been sponsored by families and other groups and hang each November at Memorial Park, a program which the Swift Current Museum hopes to continue.
The vision was to honor those who served and to provide our community with some knowledge in terms of how vast. 2,000 soldiers went to the First World War from Swift Current. So to educate them in terms of never forgetting and always recognizing that, Remembrance Day comes about once a year, but we need to think about it more often in terms of, how the world is and where we came from.
More information on the Veterans Banner program is available through the Swift Current Museum.
I'm Jody Greenman-Barber. I am a ceramic artist. I consider myself a process-based experimental ceramic artist. I live in Buena Vista, Saskatchewan, and I am represented by the Slate Art Gallery. There's something really tactile and sensuous about working with the clay material and that connection, that relationship that you have with your own body and the sensitivities through your body and your hands, working with that material. And then taking it a step further and working with this tool, the pottery wheel, there's a movement and there's something really freeing and spontaneous in just sitting down and throwing, making a form, and it's almost a very meditative process. You get captured into this time frame and you're in charge of shaping it, taking it into the direction that it needs to go, but you're working with this tool that's spinning, and so there's a relationship then between your body and the material and this tool, this machine. I started off with just not centering my body and starting to throw very loosely, and as the wheel was spinning, I would spin. I would also be listening to music, and I'd be thinking about the audience and who's engaging in the pottery, in the pot form. If you don't want to make functional objects, so where does this performance come in? So I was listening to music, and I had all these ideas going on, and all of a sudden I started to make pots that started to twist. They were kind of taking on a new shape, and I felt like I was onto something new in terms of a technique. The clay was responding to my movement, I was responding to a certain kind of rhythm, and I started to just jump onto this whole idea of dancing. And my practice has just evolved from there to deconstructing the pot form and really trying to get it to move in all sorts of directions. So the piece that's here is taking a cylinder that I've thrown on the wheel and working with the grooves on the sides and stretching them out so that they capture a kind of movement that I feel when I'm throwing. But I'm taking it further and trying to get this vessel form now to move off the table, to almost feel like it's going to fall over or to expand and demand its presence in space. So thinking about the object and how it presents itself and then how the viewer experiences it is important to me.
Well, if you're busy planning a winter getaway, health officials are reminding you to have your vaccinations up to date. As the temperatures drop throughout the winter months, many individuals are fortunate enough to jet away to exotic locations. And as inviting as this sounds, health officials are reminding you to ensure your travel vaccinations are up to date.
A lot of movement and changes in different diseases in different areas. For example, in the Dominican Republic, there's been an increase in malaria, and we've actually seen an increase in numbers this year of the people returning from the Dominican who actually did get malaria. So things like that, it's always important to know what medications you may need to take or what precautions you need to undertake when you're out in wherever you're going, at the same time keeping all your immunizations up to date.
Therefore, by doing your homework in advance, you can ensure you have the proper vaccinations well before you board your flight. You can find out what vaccinations are required for various tourist destinations by contacting your local public health office or your pharmacist. Well, this brings to a close another episode of Southwest TV News, reporting the stories that matter to you. We always welcome your news tips. You can always reach us here by phone at our studio or by email to contact us at southwesttvnews.com. Also, be sure to join us daily online for the latest news from across Southwest Saskatchewan and so much more at southwesttvnews.com. And be sure to follow us on a range of social media. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Carol Andrews.